And I'm glad you are joining me, Talmage. You have had a wild couple of years behind you, like being part of your father's like meteoric success online. How's it been from your perspective these last couple of years?
It's been the most unexpected couple of years of my life. I initially came to live with my dad in Los Angeles because I just thought he was a very high quality human and I wanted to basically learn as much as I could from him. And the timing worked out right, and that's when things blew up and I basically got to experience his transition from working for decades to create something cool
Yeah.
into something the public could either appreciate, hate on, but regardless, couldn't ignore.
All the craziness of the internet,
Exactly.
the whole
So
shebang.
it was cool seeing that, cool witnessing his arc firsthand.
Where did you move from?
So I moved from Virginia, so on the East Coast. I had previously been living with my mom for a couple of years after. So
That must have been a pretty big decision for you to move all the way across the country, essentially.
It was the summer before my senior year, and I knew that after high school it would be very difficult to live with my dad full time. So I just took the leap, and undoubtedly the best decision I've ever made in my life.
It does seem very reasonable thing to do. What's something you have learned from your father? Could be anything, small or big, but something that comes to mind when being around him more.
One of the primary lessons I've learned from him that is applicable in almost any situation or any conflict that I have is the idea that you are not your thoughts. A lot of people think that the ideas and beliefs they hold or the self-talk they have is truth. And
Yes.
so they basically live out a reality that's not necessarily true, and they aren't actually analyzing it thoroughly to see if it's true or not. They just accept their first thought or their first belief and they go with it. And so basically having the ability to step away and to observe your thoughts not as yours, but just as thoughts in like a river of consciousness.
Yeah.
And you're on the side observing it, and then you're choosing which thoughts to indulge on.
That's a powerful tool if you only remember it. It's hard, you get lost in a thought and then you forget that.
Exactly.
And you get attached to it.
The funny part is, as many times as I've heard this or been reminded about this, it's so easy to fall into the trap. It's like the human's knee-jerk reaction or knee-jerk action to listen and think that their thoughts are them.
Yes.
So having the constant practice and awareness to have that separation.
And it's constant.
Constant. It doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Like it takes honestly years to get good at and to even reach a level of proficiency where you feel like you have control over it.
That's quite like meditative practice. I feel kind of sounds like Buddhism in a way. But it comes from a different place. It doesn't come from Buddhism, it comes from this maybe don't die angle, would you say? That's where it's born, this.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably one of the primary reasons why my dad has made a point of teaching it to me is that for 10 years he was chronically depressed, and his thoughts were telling him life is not worth living and you should end it. And after he got out of that, he has now never had more joy or love for life. And so he basically dealt with his mind telling him a lie for 10 years.
Yeah.
So he got pretty good at deciphering his thoughts.
And that's very first-hand experience. So sometimes I think that I like my thoughts, like what they're saying, but other times they can be quite destructive.
Yes.
But I suppose that what you just shared is the most extreme version of that.
yes,
Like how bad they can be.
there's no value judgment on thoughts as a whole. They just come naturally and are emotional reactions, knee-jerk ones, that results from external factors. So it's a matter of once you realize that, then you can have greater authority in how you deal with it.
And you can also maybe be more forgiving of others.
Yes.
Like also the words they are speaking are an extension of their thoughts
Yes.
sometimes. So it's,
Yes.
and their actions you can be forgiving. This is only it's not them, it's the thoughts.
Yes. And the helpful part is that most people lack the awareness to know that. So not putting it on them.
Yeah. And so you can be more forgiving to yourself, to others. It seems like a more relaxed way of living.
Yep.
Maybe less stressful.
Yeah, it's like a positive and negative self-talk situation. You could use either if you want, but it's just having the awareness to know that they are not you.
And so this comes down to practice and I suppose just insight. Right? And how I suppose just practice all the time.
Yeah, because it sounds complicated if you think about it. Like, how do you not think your thoughts?
Right.
And a simple practice is if you have a knee-jerk emotional response to something that can either be extremely positive, but oftentimes people relate to when something's extremely negative and it feels like they get them down.
Yeah.
And so when something like that happens, it's a perfect opportunity for you to see that emotional response and then step outside of it.
Like the more negative it is, the better the lesson could be.
Because oftentimes that's the thing people struggle with. It's
Yes.
struggling that they think negative thoughts are them. So it's a good way of stepping away from something
I like that.
and seeing it as is. And oftentimes the negative emotional reaction they experience initially goes away just because they have that self-awareness to know that it's not
Yes.
necessarily truth.
It's a beautiful solution. What's something else you learn? If you think lessons from your father, what else comes to mind?
Yeah.
Is it connected?
One thing that comes to mind is don't be blinded. So avoid being blinded by the light by looking in the dark. And so a parable of this is there's a guy on a street who lost his keys in a dark place. And there's a lamppost. And the lamppost is not near this dark place, but the guy is searching by the lamppost for his keys. And someone comes by and says, "Hey, what are you searching for?" And he says, "Oh, I lost my keys." And he said, "Where did you lose it?" And he points to the dark. And then the guy asks, "Why are you looking here?" And he said, "Because there's light." And so this guy is basically looking in a place where he knows his keys aren't there, but there's light there, so he's looking. So it's just to illuminate that oftentimes the truth or what we're looking for is not in the light, but is in the dark. Or
connected to comfort zone as well. Going out of the comfort zone to look.
yeah, that as well, like you could say belief systems as well. And I guess to put it more simply, the one quote is like, the truth is always in the inverse. We'd like to think that something may be truthful or is a certain way, but oftentimes the complete opposite could actually be what's true.
Yes.
So sometimes flipping something completely on its head
Yeah.
is actually the trick to understanding something. And it's a bit abstract, but
Interesting.
I've seen it play out many times.
I like that. It's like you go to the kind of most unlikely place.
Yes, you go to the negative space.
Yes. And then, especially if you're stuck, it sounds like a really good
Yes.
strategy.
Yes.
For sure.
Yes.
What is something you are maybe excited about or thinking about currently? Could be ranging from abstract to very practical.
One of the things that I've been obsessed about is learning information.
Yeah,
And
so fun.
yeah, I like to read biographies about historical figures who have done monumental things in their time and place. And one historical figure I really admire is Alexander Hamilton. He was a founding father of the United States of America.
I know very little of him. This is
To draw a parallel, there was this French diplomat named Talleyrand, and this was basically during the American Revolution. And Talleyrand said that Alexander Hamilton was the American equivalent of Napoleon,
nice.
if not more. And so Alexander Hamilton was known for his speed and his ability to learn an abundant amount of information extremely quickly.
Like Napoleon, you read all the time.
Exactly.
Just constantly.
Exactly. Like,
Interesting.
all of these great people throughout history, they devour content.
Yes.
And
Or should we say, not maybe content in the modern
Yes,
context,
they-
but just books.
They
Books,
devour
texts.
textbooks, books, information, high value information that allows them to build better models about the world. And so I use Hamilton as a model for how to go about learning, just moving with an insane amount of speed and consuming an insane amount of information.
So what did you learn from Hamilton? Is it the speed or something else?
It's a combination of multiple factors. One is just the priority of speed in general. Oftentimes you can brute force your way through hard work and speed and doing more to just get something done. And then he was also impressive at doing things. So he would consume information, but he would also apply it. And so a small example of this is that he wrote the Federalist Papers,
Yeah.
and it basically compiled all of the information that he knew and allowed him to write a document that would serve as basically the outline for what democracy would look like. And another key point that he valued is basically like a T-shaped knowledge, where you basically have a wide variety of knowledge,
Yeah.
but you also have a specific area that you can focus on.
So you have a wide, but you have one area of depth.
Yeah, so like the top of it would be you have a very expansive knowledge
Yes.
on a broad number of subjects, so that you can basically have a conversation with anyone or be able to offer opinions or insights on
Yes.
a wide variety of topics. But at the same time, having a certain area that you focus in on,
Yes.
you can make real contributions to.
Get really deep on one thing.
Yes.
Have you thought about what area you find like interesting as depth, or you focus on the breadth right now?
It's a good question.
Because it's a difficult one, but yeah.
I think it's much easier to focus on breadth because it doesn't require much thinking about what you learn about.
Yeah.
It's the specialization that requires extra thought.
Yes.
And right now, with this current time and the emergence of AI, it's very difficult to know what will be valued
Yes.
in the years to come. And it seems like some skills that are worth developing are learning how to code, how to build AI, understanding computational frameworks of mathematics and physics, trying to narrow in on developing those skills and frameworks. And then also understanding basic history, philosophy, economics, government, politics. So that's the T part. That's the broad part.
Yes. I agree that the broad part is easier and also in a way more fun, but it makes sense to have a depth as well. What do you find challenging when it comes to learning? What's holding you back? What are you something you're struggling with maybe? Find difficult?
I have a tendency to want to learn more about something. And so it may sometimes come at the cost of speed to know something. And maybe it's a strength in a way where I find something and I want to learn more about it. So I will obsessively go after learning about it more.
I think somebody asked, somebody asked Balaji, like when he recommended all these books, like, and they were like, it's a problem, I go on all these rabbit holes when
And
I
he's
try
like,
to.
maybe not.
And he's that's the whole fun part of it. That's
Yeah.
the whole reason why you do it, to find them. But I see what you're saying. It can be also
Yeah.
border of kind of procrastination, maybe.
Yeah. The helpful part though is that it's oftentimes trial and error and experimentation where you get much better at it. So I could deliberate about it all day about how to be faster. But if I'm not actually doing the work of trying to figure out, of actually learning,
Yeah.
then it's of no use. So basically not focusing on deliberation, but focusing on execution and iteration.
Said. What type of content would you say you are learning from most?
The two are project-based learning, and books. I've recently started reading at least one book per week. And instead of passively learning, which most people do with books, I take detailed notes after each listening or reading session and basically work on active recall, which forces me to actually learn content. And it's only so helpful to just read. It's more important to apply. For topics that warrant projects, I find projects that I find interesting and then reverse out engineer the skills required to get to that project completion by doing the project itself. It's basically a finite game where there is an end goal, and so once you know the rules of the game, it's much easier to play.
What's an example of this project?
A small example is building a large language model.
Yeah, very clear.
So there's a specific end goal of what you want to do, and there are specific concepts, mathematical frameworks, and languages that you need to know in order to do that. And having the overarching goal or prize, you could say, of building the LLM is what allows you to make any decision to get to that. If you're determining what language you should learn or X, Y, and Z,
Yes.
you run it up against the end goal, and that allows you to make a quicker decision versus having 100+ different coding languages and you have no idea what to learn.
Have you looked at the Karpathy videos
Yes.
on YouTube?
He's the person. Yeah, Andrew Karpathy is the model I'm using for how to build a LLM. He recently started a company called Eureka Labs where he's basically teaching people how to build large language models.
Have they released any product yet?
I believe they're still working on it, but he does have a list of YouTube videos that basically go over how to build it.
And that's like the CTO of, what was he, Tesla? Or he's
Yeah,
like so
so-
insane level guy, and he's doing YouTube videos. Free.
Yeah, he initially worked at Tesla, and then he moved to OpenAI, and now he's doing his own thing. So he basically has been on the forefront of artificial intelligence, deep learning,
Yes.
neural networks.
And it connects to learning, what you have been talking about, what he's building, trying to creating the best possible tutor, AI tutor,
Yes.
to learn specific subjects. It's, as you spoke about, trying to just get as much information as possible. We're gonna get a lot more efficient at that. It seems.
Especially, there's a method called the Feynman technique. Richard Feynman, very famous physicist of the 20th century, and he was known for how good he was at teaching physics
Yep.
and his exceptional ability to distill extremely complicated concepts into an easy to understand format. And so the Feynman technique basically says, learn something, then teach it, and then figure out what you don't know, and then continue that process.
Okay, I didn't know that. He involves teaching in his learning process.
Yes.
Makes a lot of sense.
Because teaching, you may hear something, you may think you know it, but teaching it is the real tester. So in a way, Andrew Karpathy teaching this is a real test of if he knows it or not.
Yes.
And his ability to effectively teach it is proof that he does know it.
That's beautiful. I think I agree with the thing. With learning, so in this world where you have abundance of books and videos and AI tutors, it seems to me the biggest threshold will be motivation. To keep motivated or disciplined even. What's something you could speak on that of motivation and discipline? Has that been any trouble for you or not?
It hasn't been an issue for me. Like we were talking about, the project-based mindset, there is virtually an infinite amount of information you can learn. There's millions of books. You can't read them all. And so it's hard to know, what should I learn? How much should I learn? What kinds of information should I learn?
Yeah.
And so if you approach it from that mindset, it can create a lot of decision paralysis. And so that's why the idea of basically before you learn, ask the question, what's something I want to build? What's
Yes.
something I want to do?
Yes.
And then you reverse engineer what you want to learn. And then you could also, like we were talking about the T-shaped skill set, you can basically acquire a bunch of knowledge on a wide range of subjects, just general topics like history, economics, philosophy,
Yeah.
etc. And then for whatever you want to build, you can go hard there. But having an end goal of something that you want to actually do is it's one of the best ways to continue to stay motivated to learn.
I agree. And you get the kicks of then getting closer to that real, tangible goal.
Yes.
Or even building the LLM or
Yes.
whatever it might be.
It's a tight feedback loop that what you're learning is actually being effective and applied.
Yes.
Otherwise, if you just have a bunch of knowledge that you never apply, it feels empty and useless. And
Very
then,
true.
of course, you have the Da Vinci's who learn just to learn and have an endless and insatiable curiosity about the world. So that's another historical model that's helpful to use.
I like it. What are some other books that you have read that you have found interesting or that come to mind? It could be actually any type of content, cultural, like podcast or books or movies. Something spring to mind.
One book that I've read in the past that has definitely been something that was
Let's go again around.
this way?
It's so dark over there.
Yeah.
We'll be back on track.
One book that I have read that has probably been one of the most influential to how I think is called Zero, The Biography of a Dangerous Idea.
Never
by
heard of it. Interesting.
Charles Seif. And it's cool because it talks about the biography of an idea, and specifically
The what of an idea?
the
Biography.
so Zero,
Yeah.
the biography of
Biography.
a
Right.
dangerous idea.
Yes. Yes.
It basically talks about the history of the number zero and how long it took for civilization and society to incorporate it into the number system that we use today. And it's so interesting because something that seems so timeless or as robust as mathematics or physics,
Yes.
it was basically avoided for thousands of years because it broke existing mathematics.
Are you saying it took thousands of years for zero to become accepted?
Exactly.
No way.
It was just too much of a pain to reconcile and incorporate into existing mathematics. If I'm not mistaken, if I remember reading this right, people were killed over it because of how controversial of an idea it was.
Yes.
And so it's so cool that something that we see today as so integral and important to mathematics was something that people were killing over thousands of years ago.
There's that Isaac Asimov quote that every technological progress, he talks about technological progress, but mathematics as well probably, has been fought against
Yes.
by the establishment with tooth and nail.
Yes.
And that's just the sad truth of progress. For some reason, humans dislike it very much. And it's such a bad feature in my mind. But it's the reality, seems to be.
It's fun. It's a fun question to think about because zero itself enabled so many discoveries. It's basically the twin of infinity. It enabled discoveries in mathematics, computer science, philosophy. It basically served as a foundational framework to a lot of how the world runs today. And it's such a mind-boggling question of if we had accepted zero sooner, where would we be as a society now?
Yes, and take that over every new invention.
Yes.
And every new, even to this day, people are fighting against new.
Yeah, it's those what ifs or those sliding glass doors that really, there's a mental roller coaster.
So do I get you correctly that this book helped you deal with people's, negative impressions of new things and being still like, okay, it's fine that this is a natural reaction, and understanding that helps you?
It was a helpful model and further confirmation that any thoughts or ideas or norms or practices or anything that exists today, besides some immutable truths like physics, is purely a reflection of our time and place and our cultural and social norms.
Yes.
And that everything is impermanent, things will change, and to basically not let those cultural and social norms be the boundaries of where my mind can go, but allowing me to think or thrive or be in negative spaces, because oftentimes those are where the revolutionary ideas and discoveries come from.
Damn, that's a banger. That was beautiful said. Wow. That really hit home. And to be able to be in those mind spaces is useful, and in a sufficiently long time frame, it's even likely that our current moral and values are gonna change.
Yes.
If you look in history, they've always changed.
Yes.
And even very recently things have changed. We were in this modern society, then we had postmodernism, and now postmodernism is changing. It's all the time more likely that it will change rather than stay the same.
Yes. And to piggyback on that, another book I'm reading right now is Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind. It's a very known book by...
That's Harari.
Yeah, exactly. And it basically articulates this idea that we were evolved to be a certain way. And it basically tells the stories of humans up until now.
Yeah.
And it lays everything out so clearly about what our nature is and what we tend to do. And it basically gives biological and archaeological evidence to back it up. And so being able to see yourself from that hard science perspective is infinitely useful in acknowledging, or I guess achieving greater levels of self-awareness about what you are, what you do, what your thoughts are, what your tendencies or behaviors are,
Yeah.
why you do what you do, why you think the way you think, and because it breaks the fourth wall of humans thinking that this is all a unique experience, but it's extremely algorithmic, predictable. There's millions of years of evolution to back it up. So allowing you to have that level of self-awareness and to basically see how history has happened and extrapolate on what it can become.
Some kind of seeing under the hood a little bit, having a model to understand
Yes,
humanity and the archetypes of humanity.
exactly.
I think Harari, that guy, meditated for months when he was writing that book. He does his yearly meditation. But yeah, it's a big one. It's a long time since I read it though.
Yeah, I think
Talmage.
he's written about, there's a new book coming out as well called Nexus, which is basically what humans do when we walk into this age of AI.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, that's the newest one, yes.
yeah.
One more turnaround and then we're
All right.
on the good part. It's hard to say what happens when we go into the age of AI. I always find that everything up to that point is interesting to talk about. But everything after the point of the general AI is so hard to predict.
Exactly.
It makes not much sense to talk about.
Like we may no longer be able to apply historical models
Yes.
like we have been able to in the past, because this ever increasing trajectory and slope of technological progress is basically becoming an asymptote at this point. So it's taking off and we're right in the middle of it.
What's an asymptote?
So in mathematics, there is basically an invisible line where think of a dotted line,
Yeah.
and the line on a graph,
You approach the line, but
exactly,
you never hit it.
You approach it, but you never hit it. And oftentimes this results in an exponential curve.
Yes.
So it starts at the slope is continually increasing, and then at a certain point, it just shoots up towards infinity.
Yeah. Lehman's goes to infinity.
Exactly. And so it seems like we're on this slope that is about to go off into infinity. And we're trying to apply historical models that would work when the slope was 1,
Yeah.
not infinity. So it's one of the scariest and most exhilarating times a human can be born to live. Yeah.
Agreed. And at the same time, you have so many people who are going at business as usual.
Yep.
That this is happening, but for the vast majority, it's normal everyday life still. You don't see it yet.
It's like only a small group of people really understand what's about to happen. It could also be a combination of many people fearing what might happen and would rather stick to the normalcy
Right.
of their lives and
Right.
basically follow the ignorance is bliss mindset.
Yes. For me, it's more a question of when will it happen. I'm sure it will happen, but will it be like now or when? But let's mention some of this. I think you are living like insanely healthily at the moment. You're sleeping right, you're eating or training right, and it's all connected to this philosophy of don't die. What's your, in a nutshell, take on what it is?
Yeah, so like we said, we're approaching this point where technological progress, specifically through AI, is advancing at rates that humans cannot keep up with. And so eventually our ability to predict will be taken away because something is able to exceed our ability far more than we can comprehend. And that begs the question, what do we do as a species when we're giving birth to superintelligence? And we're working with a very small assumption stack because we can't apply any historical models or very few about what's going to happen. That leaves us with only one assumption that humanity can collectively agree on, which is we don't want to die in this moment. Now,
Go ahead. As individuals and as a collective species,
Exactly.
and on every kind of level.
Exactly. So don't die individually, don't kill each other, don't kill planet Earth, and align AI with don't die. And
Ride towards infinity, this
exactly.
curve.
And now the question is, what does don't die look like in practice? And don't die individually is how can you basically slow your speed of aging and reverse any aging damage that you have. And basically what is basically achieving perfect health. And so I'm fortunate enough to have been taught this in my early teens. So it's more of a preventative measure, not a intervention-based reason. So I've basically, by virtue of living around my dad, have adopted healthy habits. And so now it's the de facto to go to bed on time or to eat healthy or to exercise. And at first it can be difficult for a lot of people because we live in a world of extreme abundance and addictive algorithms. And so transitioning is difficult. But once you get over that barrier, it is very difficult to look back and say that you would prefer that previous existence.
For me, sleep has been such an eye-opener that if you actually make it the de facto thing that you prioritize, sleep, you are gonna feel so much better in every area of life. But it requires this cultural change and priorities, like to prioritize it.
Sleep is the number one drug for humans.
It's so good. You really have it. If you actually treat it like you're a professional sleeper, it's gonna pay off.
Like our body demands it. It's biologically wired into us.
Yes.
And
let me get your thoughts still on this like Balaji's thought space that we are here, the network school, network state, and he has a lot of different ideas on the internet. And what of that cloud of ideas do you find maybe most interesting?
It's fun. It's a cool experience that I can experience the basically philosophical and longevity frontier of health through don't die. But also simultaneously experiencing another frontier through Bitcoin and through network states and through decentralization. So it's cool to see they're, although completely different domains, they are basically about the same idea. Like Blueprint fundamentally rejects aging and Bitcoin fundamentally rejects inflation. So they're basically the same idea, just in completely different domains. And it's cool to see that they can fit together like a puzzle piece and can push each other forward. So it's cool to see and live in both worlds and essentially put that puzzle piece together.
It's actually, in a way, two frontiers in one place.
Yes.
And Blueprint, this healthy type of living, it fits nicely with many different kinds of, I suppose, societies.
Yep. It serves as a DNA and fundamental infrastructure that a group of people can live out or experience, and then for you to build on that.
Yep. They're both very abstract ideas that then downstream from them there's so many different effects, like Bitcoin and don't die, as you laid them out. This was really fun. I think you have a very composed way of talking. I enjoyed this a lot.
It's a skill to be able to ask good questions and specifically ask follow-on questions that relate to that topic and that are very yes and conducive to...
My pro tip is to follow your genuine interest. It's so good because it just works if you are genuinely interested, that is. Because if you're not, then it won't work.
Yeah.
But that's I like.
It's almost a reflection of the interviewer, but also of the interviewee,
Indeed.
but also the interviewer.
And most people have something interesting, you just gotta find it.
Yes.
Keep asking questions until you find the good stuff.
Yeah. And like that extends the emotional reaction or the kind of answer they give, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
well, this makes them tick.
Yes.
So you ask more about that.
Yes. And that was not kind of an animated answer. That was not interesting. Let's
you
go
move
to
on,
the next.
exactly.
Yes. Thanks a lot.
Awesome.
This was awesome. Yes.